want to welcome you to this now probably third meeting for Pathways to Adult Success. We had a great group earlier in the week, and people more focused on the data part. You are the post-secondary group, essentially. Let me introduce my colleague, Bob Balpance, for those of you who don't know him. He's here. And in the back, we have Grady Howell, who is one of our media people, and Charlene Krzeski, who most of you have interacted with extensively, and Amanda Margarona, and Ann Mayu will join us.
No, she won't be here today.
Oh, she will, okay, she won't be here today. And we have a great complement of people. And really, to get started, I'm hoping we can just go around the table so that we all get to know each other a little bit. Your name, your organization, your role, a chief question you've got that you'd like to make sure we talk.
That's where I am right now.
Good, we're very glad to have you. You may notice there's a lot of Southerners here, and that's partly because I've lived here for 30 years. I just tend to gravitate back sometimes. The weather's a little better. Bob, do you want to say a few words?
I think I'm good. We should
Okay.
move on.
We need to move on then. What I think we'll do is flip. You said the welcomes. And just to remind you all of the vision for Pathways to Adult Success that we forged in our first year of meetings, we are simply looking at how do we get all youth on a path to persistence in post-secondary. In a nutshell, that's it, and to do it with equity. And that goes to what Tina remarked about not tracking. That is a central question because as we've been talking in our previous meetings, you know, got career pathways here, got academic pathways here. Are we crosswalking the two? And I think that will be a central conversation today about do we keep those separate in their little tracks, or do we go back and forth? And what does it take? And this goes to somebody's question about implementation. What does it take to really do that and bring that alive? And in fact, when we summarize formation of this group, essentially, I'll just bring it back to, we really thought we need all your brains and experience here and wisdom to dig into these hard questions. Does everybody need the same academic preparation? If you look at your state regulations, California, it's got the A through D requirements. 50% of the kids in California don't go to Cal States or UC. They go to community colleges. The A through G requirements are essentially your core academic requirements, called different things in different states. But we're not asking the same for everybody. And I think in your own state, you would find the same. It's probably harder to get into some institutions than others. I know Georgia has a document on the web, you know. Community colleges, open access. And then you look at the bigger institutions and the more regional universities, and then you get up to the research universities, you're suddenly talking 3 to 3.25 GPA, if not more, for the 3 big research universities. In between, you got Georgia State, 2.75. So are we tracking? Are we not? It's a big question to ask. So what we need to start figuring out, where does the differentiation occur? Where are we doing it? Because we also have the kids for 12 years, right? 13, 14 sometimes now, before they go on. At what point are we helping them diverge, which is not a good idea, in my view. So how can we avoid tracking? How do we get equity? Where do we set the bar for where we want to go? These are all big questions. And then there's a whole question of industry certificates. And people have started saying, well, you may not even need an associate's degree, but you do need some validation that you know something if you're going to get a job. Some folks at Georgetown just recently took a little bit of a different tack. They said, what we're looking at is middle skills jobs. That's the way to unify all of this. And what that means is that if you're between about 25 and 40, you can earn $35,000 a year. And once you get a little bit older than that, your job is paying at least $45,000. But it's a good, solid job that takes skills, and it takes the soft skills, which we've all been talking about quite a bit in our previous discussions. So, that's a big task in front of us. Look at all of those questions, and I suspect every one of you grapples with them every day. Right? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question on language.
Mhm.
In Massachusetts, we're really transitioning or really trying to stress college and career and
Mhm.
not career as like code words for non-college
Right.
path. And so I wonder if that's part of the scope of what, I wonder if that's the lens through which we should be hearing career when we're talking about it here. Is it, are we thinking of career as like open access, any career vision, for students' futures, or are we thinking the non-college alternatives?
What do you all think? Very good question. Spot on. Because even if we go to college, most of us end up in careers.
And then what if you have college abilities, but you choose to apply your skills to a career? Is that being the other option? Or is that just the best option for you? That's it. Yeah, I don't know.
Right, we're really trying to think of career as very broad with deliberation and thought and no judgment to the choices, but have, you know, career as, or college as on the path to that at some point likely, for, you know, for high wage earning or supporting, laboring kind of possibilities, but really strengthen our language to be college and career as opposed to there's a point at which students have to choose or educators implicitly direct that.
Okay, that's a great question. You get on the table and you can almost make it the banner for the meeting, I think. So thank you very much. Just a quick take you back, especially a refresher for those of you who haven't been here before and are representing your organizations with casting. We worked for much of last year to come up with a framework, and we defined what an indicator should be, going back to data and the characteristics of the indicator. That it's based on data. It's going to lead to some analysis of why are you seeing this indicator, and then from that we come out with actions. And that was essentially in a nutshell, indicators and actions, defining them what we did last year, and looking carefully at data. But now we'd like to move on because ultimately we would like to be able to teach this perspective to other folks starting in about a year. We did commit to the Gates Foundation that we would start building a network of networks to do this and convey it. We've got to get there. We've got, I think October 22nd and 3rd next year are the big meeting we called. So as part of it, and we'll come back to this at the end of the day, we've asked people to bite off a chewable chunk of the past framework and look at how it's working as a pilot in their area. Not extra work, but additional perspective maybe, digging in. So that's going to happen. And then the goal is that we move towards really creating a strong implementation model, as somebody mentioned at that end of the table. All the time we're informed by feedback, because we may say something and something else may seem to us, we learn from it. The additional thing we came up with, and was to refine our ideas of early warning systems. Essentially, we call it EWS 2.0s. People raised the point, we didn't want to call it something else, that an early warning system is an idea that's pretty solidly accepted around the country. And if we did call it something else, we'd confuse people. So EWS was a little bit perfection, I would say, or perfecting. And then we came to the idea that you need collaborations to do that. In EWS, you can get all the data pretty much within the school walls, right? Attendance, behavior, course passing. But if you start looking at what is student success, when you go beyond the school walls, you need data from the higher ed assistants and from employers. And you're not going to get that, is our thought, without collaboration. And then a piece we recently added was the concept of navigation systems. And this is something which many of you have alluded to. If you're going to support kids with a broad vision of where they're going to go, they may need some help getting there. And so we'll spend the first part of today actually talking about navigation systems. How do you set that goal for college and careers? Careers, maybe that should be the overall goal. We all need to be employed. How do you get there? When should you start? Not necessarily only senior year, right? Maybe back it down quite a bit. So we'll spend time talking, and then we will get into collaborations this afternoon. Eliza?
You have access to this PowerPoint, so I don't have to practice.
Sure. Charlene, we will give access to the PowerPoint, correct?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And everything's being recorded as well, so.
Oh, yeah. And we in fact have a website, Amanda?
Yes.
You want to just take 30 seconds and explain? Because that's the repository.
It is. We have, there's a website. It's called pathwaystoadultsuccess.org. We'll send that out with everything as well, but on there you will find each of the work groups, all the recorded sessions, all the collateral. You'll see last year's materials, events, everything pretty much. It is the repository for all of your collateral that you guys, the work that you guys do, and everything like that. And if you have problems accessing it, contact any of us, and we can certainly send that to you. But it's up and running. I'm looking at it right now. So yeah.
Okay, and I'm sure Amanda would be happy to show it to you during lunch or something.
Sure.
Just take a look at it. So, moving on. Bob, you want to say anything before we sink our teeth in?
Systems, is that, when you we look at the data, where do kids get their navigation advice now? It's uniformly from myself or my parents, right? And the challenge with that is that, one, the youth labor market has changed radically in the past 20 years. So the youth labor market their parents experienced is not what they will experience. So the parents have great wisdom, but they don't have current experience. Kids don't know what they don't know. I'll give you a really live example. We were doing some high school redesign work in New Mexico. The schools are given broad freedom to come up with something great. And one school said, our great thing is we're going to create cosmetology and welding pathways. And you can see like the state just like sunk. Like, oh my God, this was a bad idea to let them have this freedom. Because those are the two stereotype, sort of old school vocational, right? But then in talking to the school, they had got that from student feedback. They had asked students, what kind of pathways do you want? And welding was because in one part of the state, you would get a job out of high school and make $100,000 a year. Now, there's only 20 people a year getting that job. It's almost like becoming a basketball player, right? But for a poor rural community, the idea that I could go from high school and have a shot at a $100,000 job, kids got that information, and they said, that's what I want to do. Cosmetology, it was girls wanting to have their own business. That's what they really wanted, and that's the one example they've seen of female-owned businesses in their community. So in a way, it seemed like very old school, but from the kids' point of view, there was a logic behind it. The problem was those kids don't know what they don't know, right? And so that's where you can clearly see, like, you need some navigation guidance in there to say, well, okay, let's look at welding. How many openings are there? How many applicants are there? Are you really willing to move? Because the other thing, this was a school that served the Pueblos, and there was a strong desire to stay in the community. Well, you can't be a welder and stay in your community, right? So like, at least understand that. So it's just very clear that we don't have those systems. And then the other part of the problem is historically, who is responsible for navigation advice in a high school? The guidance counselor. And what's their caseload? 300, 500, 700, 900, depending on where you are. If you look back in the history books, I'm a retired history major, when they were thinking about this was the era when most kids, high school was the end. And their view was if the majority of kids are going to go on and find work after high school or start families, what do they need a counselor for? The counselor was for the 100 kids out of the 500 who are going to college to sort of staff the professions, right? And so, but now, every kid needs that counselor. And there's no way a counselor can give navigation advice to 500 kids. So basically, we have to create, how do we create a way to have more people who are able to give good guidance? And that's where the idea of this guide navigation system. And as we'll see, that to me is the critical problem, but it's not an easy problem. Because it's not just as simple as saying, well, let's recruit a bunch of adults to be like navigators. Well, they're only good navigators if they themselves are informed. And they themselves might not understand how much the youth labor market has changed. Because the final stat I'll give you, then we can move on, is that, we know that about, ultimately 90% of kids are getting some sort of high school degree, and of those, about 70% are going right into some sort of post-secondary schooling. That's about 60%, you put those numbers together. But of those other 40% that think, oh, I don't want to go to school, I want to go to work, or I can't go to school, I got to go to work, most of those actually ultimately try to come back to school now. Because they find the youth labor market is so rough that there's not steady employment, there's long stretches of unemployment, it's not full-time work, it's 20 hours here, 10 hours there, they're making $10,000 a year. They then try to go back to school, and it's now so much tougher because they've been away for 3 years, they left not liking school, and now they're trying to go back, right? And that's a whole other group. And so it turns out now that over 85% of the youth cohort is touching post-secondary at some point in their 20s, which means it's almost universal now that our kids are experiencing post-secondary in some form with a wide variety of success, right? And so that's, again, why it's paramount we figure it out, because it is almost all. And our systems are pretty weak, right? So that's why they're really this discussion today is so important. We're trying to think through how could you start building this system? And it's our first stab at straw man, and really want to get your feedback and improvement on how we build this navigation system.
Thank you very much. Quick to summarize the day. Navigation systems and the components. We are going to briefly segue around lunchtime into some how-tos. There are samples, some materials we'd like to put up on the website for you and just get your feedback on that. Then we're going to spend most of the afternoon again on collaboration to make this all work, and a little bit about pilots. So, here's our quick agenda. We are almost exactly on target for once. We hope to stay that way, and we'll try and keep you on that. And I think to get started, we're going to form some small groups and talk about the navigation system. Y'all got that in advance, and I'm wondering whether anybody had time to read it in advance. Raise your hand if you did. Okay, one person. Four people. Okay, that's pretty good. We will, when we form in a small group, give you a couple minutes to skim it and get a grip on it, and then we'll embark on a conversation. But let's see. Can we start numbering off 1, 2, 3, 4, going around the room?
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2,
3, 4, 1,
2, 3,
4,
1,
2,
3, 4, 1, 2, 3,
1.
2.
Okay, now, we have some handy dandy little signs. The 2s will assemble over here. The 1s will sit over there. The 4s will sit over there. And the 3s in the back of your ring. And we have enough here.